All right, so here let's continue our discussion about the relationship between the geographical location and economic prosperity. Okay, and in the previous video, when we wrap it up, we did not fully, finish this discussion, especially when we said that the when we look at the causation between the two variables, we're pretty confident that the causation goes from geographic location to economic prosperity. Okay, so this is a pretty amazing thing or a very strong argument we're making, which we could not make when we look at the relationship between a pair of economic variables. So as we said before, if we in chapter 1, when we look at the relationship between saving investment and economic development, right, or income level, we could try different ways to convince people that the more you save, the more you would invest, and then the higher income you're going to achieve. But again, people always being skeptical. They could challenge us by saying that, probably because you guys are richer. I'm talking about the United States and other advanced economies, so that you have more financial resources and you can save more and invest more. Okay, so the causation could go the other way around. Okay, now when it comes to the public policy, then that could change everything. Okay, if the causation goes the other way, then you're not supposed to make a suggestion to these Asian or African economies to save more, okay? Because if the causation goes the other way, okay. In other words, the higher income leads to higher saving, then the any policies to encourage saving should not be the ones that could lead to a higher income level, right? But here you may find that we don't have to worry about that at all, okay? Because the geographic location never changes for our economy, okay? Or never changes in a meaningful way, okay? And so if there's any relationship we could find or build between geography and income level, then it must go from one way, okay, instead of the other. All right. So again, is this really a bad news for developing countries? No, it's not. Okay. Or if you are relatively more pessimistic, you can take it that way. But I think the way I personally like is a more positive, more optimistic way. Because when we look at the geographic location, as we try, by looking at the access to water, closer to the major market or landlocked or not, it's all about, technological innovation. It's all about information, okay? It's not just about the cost. It's also about, our minds, okay? And but look at today. Today we have internet, which those people back in 18th and 19th century never thought about, right? We had the airplanes. We have all kinds of trains and other things, all kinds of the ways of transportation. Okay, we have computers, right? So we have smartphones. Sorry, so we have all kinds of apps. So no matter where you stay these days, okay, you have pretty much the same access to the outside world as a typical American or a European has in their own country, right? So even you stay again in Nepal, let's say, landlocked country in Asia, right? You would know who won the presidential election in the United States last year, right? You know that what the European Central Bank did last week, okay, in terms of their monetary policies. So you have the access to all the information anywhere around the globe. Okay, So if we believe, in the previous centuries, these landlocked economies in Asia and Africa had been falling behind because of that reason, because of the limited access to information to the outside world. Now that barrier has already been removed because of technological innovation, right? So we would expect that, in the next part of this century or probably next century, these economies are going to take off economically. Okay, they're going to achieve a much higher level of income than what they are today. Okay, so especially in Africa, many economists actually believe that for the second half of the 21st century or the whole 22nd century are going to be the Africans' century. Okay, we're going to see a lot of African economies booming. Okay, especially these populous ones like Nigeria, like South Africa, and several others. Okay, and so again, there are different ways you can look at these. Okay, and we believe the point here, the most important point, is not the geographic location itself. It's the limited access to the outside information. Okay. All right. Towards the end of our discussion in this chapter, there are two more charts or figures I want to discuss. Okay. Again, to help us better understand why trade is important or why Japan has an eager mind and how that affects their economic prosperity. Okay. But here we kind of, going back to look at the whole, Asia. Okay. As you can see here, the vertical axis is the import as a ratio in GDP, and the horizontal axis is their per capita GDP, their income level, okay, using the purchasing power parity and taking the log, okay. And this is a worldwide sample, okay. And you can see that, these economies among them, we find a upward trend or relationship between these two. In other words, the more economy imports from outside, from the rest of the world, the higher their income. Okay. Again, we believe this is because the more they import, that means the more they open to the rest of the world. Okay. So, for example, when we buy a German-made beer, okay, or French-made wine, okay, or a British-made vaccine. Okay, so we're not just buying their products. We also learn their culture, right? We also learn how they made these great things. Okay, technically, methodologically, right? And we also learn a lot about their taste, their preferences. Okay, and we believe that's quite beneficial in terms of technological innovation. Okay, when we have more different ideas going on here in our own economy. Okay, another thing you would find is again, when you look at these Asian economies, you would find that most of them are actually stay above the regression line. Okay, especially when we look at Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, these economies, Philippines, Thailand, okay, way above. That means to achieve the same level of income, these economies actually import a lot more. Okay, import a lot more. So they are way opener than, or way more open than the rest of the world. Okay. All right, another figure we want to look at is export as a ratio in GDP. Okay, again, it's pretty much the same thing when you look at these ones. There's an upward trend or a positive correlation between the export ratio and the income level. So the more you export, the higher your income tend to be. Okay, and you also find these Asian economies stay above, or some of them way above the trend line, the regression line. Okay, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia. So they trade a lot. In other words, they export a lot here. Okay. Again, here it's not please do not just narrowly focus upon the more money they make from the rest of the world. Okay? For example, when you look at Singapore, Hong Kong, again, they also import a lot. In other words, they also spend a lot on, the American-made, European-made products. Okay? The more important thing we believe is really about the mind, okay, and about the attitude. Okay, keep learning, being eager to learn what happened outside. Here we're gonna draw the conclusion. Okay, and excuse me. This chapter, the second chapter, we focused upon Japan. We spent a lot of time talking about it because we believe in many aspects Japan was, is, and will still be the role model for the whole Asian economies, okay, for other Asian economies. And so here we, start our discussion with the starting point of the Japan's economic takeoff, which was major restoration. Okay, and we said that a lot of things happened during the major restoration that put Japan into a much more advanced position compared to other Asian economies. And we also discussed its post-war economic miracle. Okay? And in our discussion, we definitely talk about different aspects, but we pay more attention to two things. Number one, it's high saving rate. Okay, why they save more? Okay, we check out that article and the different hypotheses. The general conclusion would be, we did not find a single factor which can primarily explain the high saving rate in Japan. Okay, some of these hypotheses, it sounds pretty convincing to us, but when we really look at the empirical evidence, it's either mixed or even go against the hypothesis. Okay, so the conclusion here is, in general, we probably believe it's all factors or multiple factors combined or worked together to lead to a high saving rate in Japan. Okay, and in this video and the previous ones, we also discussed the eager mind. Okay, we said that Japanese are, Japanese people tend to be pretty good in terms of technological innovation. Okay, and we want to know why. Okay, and what's the historical and geographical reasons for that. Now, I also want to point out that when we talk about saving, this is, definitely built upon our discussion in chapter 1, okay, the role of saving, discussed by Alan Smith, okay, and when we look at the eager mind thing, this is definitely about what we discussed in chapter 1, about education in R&D, okay, from the Thomas Malthus theory, right? All right, so here we already wrap up our discussion about Japan. And the next ones we're gonna discuss are the Asian tigers. Okay, so they are the kind of the followers. They today they all become the developed economies, high-income ones. But in terms of their economic development, they are behind Japan. Okay. Even some of them probably today already their income per person already topped Japan or overtook Japan, becomes richer and more developed. But in terms of their economic takeoff, most of them it happened after World War II. Okay, so again, we're still going to follow the same way: the historical, the geographical approach to understand their economic development. Okay, all right, stay tuned.